Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch and how you can discover this new level of softness with their iconic sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% responded that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They source the rarest 100% organic cotton for an incredible softness to start. Then they skip the toxins and harsh chemicals for a natural feel unlike anything else, and it all comes together with their signature weave. This special design feels buttery, breathable, and unlocks new levels of softness with every wash, and they stand behind their promise of softness. With their 30-night guarantee, you can wash, style, and sleep in their sheets for an entire month. If during the 30 nights, you don't love your sheets or feel them getting softer and softer, you can send them right back. No questions asked. So head to bollandbranch.com for 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. That's BOLL and branch.com. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Oklahoma State loses Game 1 of the season as Texas rolls into Stillwater and shocks the Big 12. Kansas State also drops game number 1 in the Big 12 Conference, 37-10, up there in Morgantown. And Oklahoma is continuing to impress people around the league after a 62-28 win down there in Lubbock. Welcome in here to the 10 of 12 podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gilbert. This is your home for all things Big 12. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 10 of 12 podcast. I'd appreciate that very much. You can stay up to date with everything going on around the league, the latest highlights, updates, predictions. It's all there on Twitter at 10 of 12 podcast. Once again, though, we've got 5 games to digest from this past weekend of Big 12 football. So there should be a lot on our plate. And without any further ado, let's just get right into the games here. We've got Texas, of course, like I said, stunning Oklahoma State down there in Stillwater, 41-34. An overtime classic, so to speak, down there. A good game. Mike Gundy's squad got to be disappointed. A lot of points left off the scoreboard in that game, but Texas does get it done. K-State, of course, as well, loses game number 1 on the season, 37-10 against West Virginia. It was ugly for K-State. There's no other way, really, to describe it for the Wildcats. They were pretty much, this game was pretty much over before it started. Iowa State, of course, beating up on Kansas by 30 points, 52-22, the final over in Lawrence. Oklahoma, like I said, 62-28 over Texas Tech, and TCU wins by 10 points over Baylor down there in Waco, 33-23. Even though that final score, same kind of story that happened last weekend with Baylor. The final score doesn't really tell the story. Baylor was pretty much out of this game from the get-go. But we'll go ahead and kick it off here with Texas and Oklahoma State. This was the game of the week in the Big 12. Only, I think it was a 3 or 4 point spread for Oklahoma State. Vegas got this one right somehow, some way. But if you watch this game, it was crazy. Texas is not a good football team. I would be very uncomfortable betting on them moving forward. They didn't deserve to win this game. They did not deserve to win this game. Okay, Texas did not win this game. Oklahoma State is the team that lost this game. That's the story from the game. You've got 5 turnovers for Oklahoma State, 0 for Texas. And sure, you can give Texas some credit for not being stupid with the football. You got to give them, respect for making the necessary plays to win the game. They set themselves up for victory, and they pulled it out of their hats somehow. So I give them credit. I can't say that they didn't win the game because they did. But like I said, 5-0 in the turnover margin. You got to think if just one of those 5 turnovers doesn't happen, then Oklahoma State's probably going to go out and win this game. If 2 or 3 of them are wiped off the board, it's an easy, comfortable win for Mike Gundy and his Cowboys. Some of them were, just a bad throw by Sanders, a miscue on a snap and a fumble, a big hit by the defense, and, give Osai credit for, Texas. He had some big plays on the defense side of the football. But, overall, this game, if they play 10 times, I like to say this a lot, if they play 10 times, Texas has a chance to win 1 time out of 10. If they play 10 times, Oklahoma State's going to win it 9 times out of 10. This was Texas's one chance to win the game, and they won the game. I give them credit. Usually when a game like this kind of happens, it always seems like Texas would choke it away and lose. But I also got noted down here, it was 5-0 in the turnover margin. It really should have been 6-0. If you go back in the fourth quarter, if you watch this game, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm not being crazy. I'm not spitting out, just some random, if you watch this game, you know that Texas should not have won this game at all. It should have been close. Oklahoma State is the best team in the Big 12. We'll get to the rankings and all that later on in the show, as well as some previews of next week's games as well. But Texas is not good. Oklahoma State's the best team in the league, okay? Talking about in the fourth quarter, Texas is about to punt the football. I believe there was maybe 5-6 minutes left in the game. They're down by, I think, 5 or 6 points as well. So, it was 4th and 20. If you're Tom Herman, you can't go for it. If you're probably within 10 yards, you might be looking at 4-down territory. But with, they just couldn't go for it with the yardage to go. But on the punt, there was, of course, a roughing the kicker, not running into, but a roughing the kicker penalty. I believe that's a 15-yard penalty. So even if it wasn't an automatic, I guess I should say, if it was not an automatic first down, Texas would have not have even gotten the first down. It would have still been, I think, 4th and 5. So they get the automatic first down, and then I believe in this set of downs or the next set of downs, they go for it on 4th down. They convert, and then I believe on the touchdown later in that drive, it was also 4th down, and they converted for a touchdown as well. So, that drive for Texas was kind of just a microcosm of the game. Oklahoma State had a great stop on defense. The Oklahoma State defense deserves a lot of credit in this game. They gave up 41 points, including an overtime, which is not the best, stat there. But they held the Longhorns to 287 yards, total yards. They hold them to 287 total yards. So that's a very good number versus 530 for the Texas defense. So, that's just... It's crazy how polar opposite those numbers are, but you have Texas winning the game. But back to the Oklahoma State defense here, man. They deserve a lot of credit because of, like I talked about, essentially the 6-0 turnover margin. To even make this a game was very impressive. And revolving back to that main point about this drive here, the defense got to stop. They finally were like, okay, we're going to get off the field, give Spencer Sanders the football. Hopefully he can lead us to a score. And then, of course, the penalty on the punt gives Texas the ball right back, and that was kind of the moment where you're like, wow, this actually might happen for Texas. They pulled something out of their rear end. Like I mentioned here, Texas is not good. Oklahoma State's the best team in the Big 12. This game right here from Saturday does not change my mind at all. If on Saturday, we'll get into the preview later on in the show, against Kansas State, if they continue to turn the ball over, if they continue to make these dumb mistakes, disciplinary, all that stuff, if they continue to do that, then I'm going to be a little shaky on the Cowboys moving forward. But for now, it's an easy, this is the best team. I don't think you can question it as of right now in the Big 12. You've got the 2 4th-down conversions on the last drive, the 6-0 turnover margin, 530 total yards for Oklahoma State, only 287. How do you score 41 points with 287 yards? Texas's defense didn't even do that good of a job. They just got lucky turnovers. Okay, they forced a few, but for the most part, it was just handed to them on a silver platter. So this was a fast-paced game. I'm surprised it was 41-34. Teams were hiking the ball with 30 seconds left on the play clock. So if you pick the under, and this one, tough luck for you. It just didn't work out. So overall, though, Texas, I hate to. They won the game, but. That's pretty much all I've got noted down for this game. There were some questionable calls. If you watch this game, man, I know I keep saying if you watched it. If you watched this game on TV, man, and I hope you were, because the only other game was TCU and Baylor at this time, which was not that fun of a game. But it was just ridiculous. You've got pass interference calls. You've got on the final possession of overtime, Spencer Sanders, I believe, should have been called targeting, should have been called unnecessary roughness. There was a hit on him as he was sliding. There was just everything going on. And I was talking to my roommate earlier today, actually, before I was recording. We were talking about this game, and he was like, yeah, I can't believe they missed that PI call. And I was literally just like, which one? Because there were so many. Texas didn't deserve to win this game. They really didn't. The refs, even if the refs, weren't necessarily involved, man, it's Oklahoma State, like I said, 6-0, the turnovers, man. It's just not. Texas doesn't deserve to win this game. They really don't. Tom Herman got out-coached in this game by Mike Gundy. The last thing that I've got here, Spencer Sanders was sacked to end the game. It was a 4th down play. in the second half of overtime. So you've literally got nothing to lose here if you're Spencer Sanders. You need 7 points. And what does he do? Texas brings an all-out blitz on him. I believe it was like the Engage 8 play on Madden. They were bringing the house on Sanders. And he just goes out, rolls out to his left, and takes a sack, and the game is over. I'm sorry, Spencer Sanders. I know you're young, and you've got some rust from missing some games this season. I get all of that, but you can't take a sack in that situation. That is pretty much the one situation where you do not take the sack. You throw the ball away. If it's an interception, then that's it. You lost the game. But you at least gave your team a chance. Maybe the ball gets batted into the air, and crazy catch, and you've got a touchdown. You just can't take a sack in that situation. That's the one time where you do not take the sack. You always just you chuck it. You're playing 500 in your backyard. 500 alive. You chuck it to the end zone. You try to make Tylan Wallace. You've got probably the best wideout in the league. He was co-offensive player of the week last week. Let him go up and make a play, man. Wallace, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns on 11 receptions. So he proved, he's proved it for years now, but he proved on Saturday that he was back. And you got to let someone make a play. You can't take a sack to end the game like that. I know they had pressure, but still, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, I would be pretty angry about that. But if you're Mike Gundy, you use this as a learning experience. Say, hey, this is obviously, I'm sure Sanders, right when he went to the ground, he knew that he messed up. But there's a lot of learning experiences from this game for Oklahoma State. I'm not concerned about them moving forward. As for Texas, man, definitely 100% concerned. This is not a good football team. It is just a joke that this team is ranked now, which is it's laughable, quite honestly. And K-State drops out of the polls. What are these guys on? Doesn't make any sense to me. But that's pretty much all I've got noted down for that game. Texas pulls something out of their rear end and gets a win down there in Stillwater. 41-34 the final in overtime. Next game we'll talk about here, West Virginia hosting Kansas State. 37-10 was the final out there in Morgantown. And this game was pretty much over before it started. And I know K-State kind of hung around here. And then it was kind of in the second quarter when if you're a K-State fan watching, you realized that this team was not going to win this game. There was no way. I think hindsight's 20/20. Looking back at it, this game was over like right from the get-go. Howard throws an interception on the first drive for Kansas State after I think 3 throws. So hindsight, this game was over immediately. Like there was no chance K-State was going to compete in this one. They hung around in real time. I would say, the second quarter was when it was like even the most optimistic of K-State fans realized this one was over. But if you look back at it, watch the replay, the highlights. This game was pretty much over after that pick from Will Howard. So K-State was never in the game. They really weren't. When you don't have Deuce Vaughn hitting that home run ball, when you don't have your defense getting a pick six for you, when you don't have your punt return team or your kick return team taking one to the house, okay, you're going to struggle. And I think the point that I made last week was actually not too far off in me saying that Kansas State against Kansas, if they don't have those special teams plays in the first quarter, I don't think they win by that much. And, I'll be fair and say that if the offense were to get the football, then they could have easily went down and scored, sure. But I think the proof is in the pudding in this game that, hey, they didn't get bailed out by Deuce Vaughn or the special teams or the defense, and they got exposed. It's straight up what happened here. Kansas State, week in and week out, you can't rely on that big play. You just can't. You've got to go out and control the clock and play that, Chris Kleiman, even the Bill Snyder football, because it's very similar. You've got to go out and play that way and win the game that way. That's why I think there was so much skepticism coming into this game around the country. I know most K-State fans were pretty optimistic about this one, but Vegas, again, got this one right as well. And Vegas really did get this one right, okay? Vegas didn't get the Texas game right at all. They got lucky there. Oklahoma State just played terrible, okay? So Vegas was wrong there, but Vegas got this one right. K-State was not the better team here. West Virginia, by a significant margin, was the better team here in pretty much all aspects of the game. Kansas State's defense has pretty much been their bright spot this season. It was just dull and dark and boring. There was no energy. There was no camaraderie within that defense. The tackling was weak. You can give West Virginia some credit for breaking those tackles and things of that nature, but overall it was just a weak performance overall by Kansas State. Like I mentioned, it was over before it started. I know in real time they hung around. It was a 3-3 game at the end of the first quarter, but boy, West Virginia ran away with this one. And it really goes to show you how much this team can struggle when Will Howard, when the pressure is put on him, how much this team can struggle when you've got a true freshman under center in the Big 12 Conference. Again, I'm not trying to, be critical, be harsh of Will Howard. I know he's young. I get that. But at the same time, I think that after this loss, you've really got to start kicking it up a notch and making some of those adjustments to prepare yourself for Oklahoma State, like we'll talk about here on the second half of the show. Will Howard threw 2 pick sixes. He essentially threw 2 of them. He threw one of them, and it was a screen pass over towards the right side. I believe it was to Phillip Brooks, or it was one. He threw it over, and this is just not a pass you make. Okay, even if this pass wasn't intercepted for a pick six, it would have been a loss of yards. This is one that Will Howard needs to eat up. You've got to look for your second option down the field. At the worst, you take a sack, you throw the ball out of bounds. You can't throw this ball over towards the right side like he did. It was an easy pick six, absolutely read like a book by the Mountaineer defense there. I give them credit, but at the same time, this was not a smart play by Howard. And then the very next play that Howard's on offense, he should have thrown another pick six. This ball was, missed by an inch by a Mountaineer defender. And then he gets, so there's no pick six there, but essentially there was 2 pick sixes in my mind. There was one on paper, which was terrible, but Howard just didn't play well. He really didn't play well in this game. Again, I'm not trying to be critical of him, but I think the best way to describe it, I was talking to my roommate about this as well. When Skylar Thompson was under center for Kansas State, listen here to this and think about how confident you are in Will Howard, okay? When Skylar Thompson was playing quarterback for Kansas State, I was confident. The ball goes in the air. I'm thinking, okay, who's gonna go up and make a play? Is it Knowles? Is it Youngblood? Obviously not anymore, but let's go back to last year when things were normal, Oh, somebody's going to make a play. Dalton Schoen's going to go up and grab that catch. Someone's going to make a play. The ball's going to be on the money. Things are going to be okay. You go to this year now with Will Howard, my heart skips a few beats. I'm being honest here. I had to hold my breath every time he throws the football. Please don't get picked off. Please don't get batted out, at the line. I can't be comfortable with Howard throwing it, okay? He had that one deep ball to Malik Knowles for a touchdown, which the lone touchdown on the day. I give K-State credit for that one, sure. But when he threw it, I'm like, oh boy, is this going to be picked off? What's going to happen here? Because we certainly saw our fair share of Will Howard turnovers in this game. So again, I'm not trying to be critical of him. That's just how I feel. When he throws the ball, I get nervous. That's not how you should feel about your quarterback. And the only way he can win that over with me is just gain that trust, okay? He made some steps forward in the TCU game, in the KU game, but it's like, one step forward, 2 steps back here. Will Howard, I'm kind of back at square one with him. I want him to do good. I want him to succeed in this league. But at the same time, man, it's iffy. Like, my heart skips a few beats every time he throws one of those deep balls. We've talked a lot about Kansas State in this game. West Virginia's 4-2. Don't look now, but the Mountaineers have a winning record at 3-2 in Big 12 play as well. They're probably one of the worst, after 5 games of conference play, one of the worst 3-2 teams we've seen in this league in a while. Okay, West Virginia's not that good. You're talking wins over Baylor and Kansas, who are the bottom 2 teams in the Big 12 at this point, which is very clear now. And then you've got a good win over Kansas State, but that was bound to happen. Everything was bound to, come back down to earth here essentially after, some very fortunate games and plays for Kansas State in the past couple of weeks. So, West Virginia's fine. I don't want to be too critical of them and say they're not good, but I don't think, even though they are 3-2, this is not a top half team yet. They've got potential. Daggy played well, 22 for 34. He threw for over 300 yards. He's got 2 touchdowns, through the air. So they played fine. But I'm not convinced yet that this team really can go out and compete day in. I guess I should say week in and week out here in the Big 12. But this, I think this might kind of be the real K-State that we were kind of anticipating. We knew that this team wasn't going to be, 9-0 at the end of league play. It wasn't going to happen. but I don't think anyone anticipated it to be this ugly against West Virginia. But, a loss over the mountain to the Mountaineers is not the end of your season. Of course, it's how you bounce back next week against Oklahoma State. That'll be a fun one. And I'm anxious to see how this team can. This is really what matters as an athlete, how you respond to the adversity and really come back and attack the next day. That's what I'm looking forward to most with Kansas State. That's pretty much all that I've got noted down for this game. I mean, it was over from the start. Give West Virginia credit. I don't want to try to say that this was all on Kansas State because West Virginia played a good football game. But overall, I think K-State's they need to do better in all aspects of the game. Yeah, if you can get that special teams touchdown or the defensive play, those are going to be huge against a team like Oklahoma State. Your offense needs to score more than 10 points. And like I mentioned on just a few minutes ago, the defense needs to bring just some more energy and life. If you were watching this game, it was there were some plays here like, wow, the defense kind of just given up on this game. So overall, K-State's got to improve. There's no question about that after a loss like this. We'll see what happens. Of course, a huge game. We'll talk about it second half of the show against Oklahoma State. But 37-10 was the final out there in Morgantown. Next game we'll get into here, TCU and Baylor. Last week on the show, I mentioned it. This one was kind of a toss-up game here. I wasn't too confident in one team or the other, but what I was confident in was that this would be a double-digit win for whoever does win the game. And I was totally right about TCU winning this game by 10 points. If you watch this game, I hate to keep saying if you watch this game ... but if you were seeing this one on TV, it was not close at all. The score was 30-0, I think. At one point, it was 20-0 at the end of the first quarter. So this one again was pretty much over right from the get-go. TCU kind of bounced back after some tough losses, and then Baylor's really just kind of. Baylor played well in the second half, and they played well in the second half last week against Texas as well. But you can't be sleepwalking through the first 30 minutes of these games in the Big 12. You're not. You're not going to win many games doing that, okay? You're just not. So I give TCU credit, but at the same time, Baylor has kind of etched themselves at the 9 spot for me in the Big 12. KU's obviously down there alone at the bottom, but TCU picking up a win over a team who is not. You're coming off a year where you go to a New Year's Six Bowl and you play well, and I believe, Georgia, they beat them, but still, this is not a terrible Baylor team, but at the same time, we're seeing the effects of Matt Rule not being there in Waco. Just really not much else to say about this game. Like I mentioned earlier, if you were watching it, I watched bits and pieces of it, but, we had the Texas-Oklahoma State game here going on simultaneously with this one, so I really would not keep in too much on it, but based off of what I saw, TCU had the big touchdown return to the house to really propel them for a win. And I know we talk about that a lot here with Kansas State, but when you get that special teams play, man, it just changes the game. It's not just 7 points and then you go back to football. No, it really, momentum, all of that stuff changes when you get that big home run ball. Jalen Reagor, I was watching him last night on Sunday Night Football, and probably the worst game I've ever seen in prime time, but whatever. Reagor had a touchdown for the Eagles. Good to see that for him. I had him on my fantasy team I guess pretty much I drafted him and then he got injured and I kind of let him go. But good to see him. Good to see him in the NFL. We got to see for the 49ers. We got to see JaMycal Hasty. So it's good to see these guys. It really is. Performing at a high level in the NFL. You got CeeDee Lamb. Devin Duvernay's making some plays for the Ravens, Lamb for the Cowboys. It's good to see. It really is. It's a good thing to see in year one for these players how much of an impact they're having. And I think COVID might have a little bit of an impact here, but you give credit where credit's due. These guys are working hard. Hasty was undrafted. Now he's making, I think he had a touchdown, I believe, for the Niners in that game against Seattle. So, of course, it goes without saying Tyler Lockett's had a heck of a season. Just good to see all around our league some players excelling at the next level. But as for this game, it was a 10-point victory, but it really wasn't close at all. Baylor's got some major adjustments moving forward if they want to compete in the Big 12. As for TCU, man, this was the TCU that 3 weeks ago I was harping on and saying, yes, this team can go out and compete for the top half of the league. They suffer some bad losses, to say the least, right? But here they are. They're coming back. And I think the next game for the Horned Frogs is really what will determine that. We'll talk about that later on, second half of the show. But that's really all that I've got noted down here. I mean, these last 3 games, there was pretty much nothing exciting going on. Like I said, it was 30-0 here in the second quarter in that TCU-Baylor game. So that'll wrap up pretty much that game for us. 33-23 the final down there in Waco as TCU beats up on Baylor. Next game, we've got Oklahoma and Texas Tech, 62-28. I mean, this is another game where I don't know what to say. Easy win for Oklahoma. Texas Tech actually went down the field, got the ball first, and scored a touchdown. So they tried they tried to make it a little bit of a game, but I don't know how many turnovers Columbia had for Texas Tech, but it was interception after interception after interception for the Texas Tech offense. And Oklahoma, they're going to win this game regardless of if those plays happen, but that definitely just took a lot more weight off of Spencer Rattler's shoulders. I'm really buying in on Oklahoma. Of course, we'll talk about the rankings on the second half of the show, but this is a team that is quickly rising after losses to Iowa State and K-State, earlier in the season. So I like where this team is going. The more you watch Rattler, the more that I realize that, hey, I understand why there was so much hype coming into this guy's name coming into the season. You know, he's proving it now for a few weeks straight now that he can make these big-time plays. And he makes it look easy, okay? Mahomes, I hate to keep comparing it to Mahomes, but he's making some Mahomesy, plays out there in between the white lines for the Sooners. So, other than that, though, Oklahoma probably didn't put up 62 points without the interceptions. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But overall, Rattler played well. I'm going to continue to buy into this team moving forward. They play KU in Norman, so next weekend's game should be an absolute blowout. But I'm going to look for this team to continue to rise, and they are on the rise. Okay, the Big 12 is now wide open, and after you see Oklahoma losing to Iowa State and K-State, you're thinking there is no way that they're going to have a chance at the Big 12 title game. Well, look at Iowa State, K-State, and Oklahoma State. They've all got one loss. I know, I totally get that as far as the tiebreakers go, Oklahoma's not in the best position. You lose to Iowa State and K-State, who are right there at the top. But at the same time, you've got Oklahoma State still coming up on your schedule. You would have a tiebreaker at least over the Cowboys. Iowa State lost to Oklahoma State, so the Cowboys have that over the Cyclones. And, things are going to get crazy here in the last month or so of the season. Should be a ton of fun to follow. Seriously, this game was 50-0. I guess Texas Tech scored a few touchdowns in the first half. But Oklahoma was just running away with this game, and it was kind of crazy because midway through the first, it looked like it was going to be a pretty close game and a competitive game with that. But the turnovers, like I mentioned, were just too costly for the Red Raiders. 62-28 is the final down there in Lubbock. Last game we've got to recap from this last weekend in the Big 12. Kansas and Iowa State, not much to say here. Iowa State wins it by 30. But this is also another game here where I don't know if the final score necessarily gives you a full story about what happened in this game. Kansas hung around. I give Kansas some credit in this game. They had another special teams touchdown. They did it without Puka, so there's some optimism, so to speak, for Kansas. But they hung around, and I like what Daniels is doing at quarterback for Kansas. They were playing a lot of youngsters, a lot of true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. This COVID season, I think, is a big reason for that. But also when you're 0-15 and I guess they're 0-6 on the season, right? You're just going to go out and ride whoever you can. But it's good to see the youngsters going in there and making plays. I think the future is not necessarily bright for KU football. Even talking 4 years from now or 4 days from now. But I think this game was a step in the right direction. I'm not saying they're going to go out and beat Oklahoma. I'm not saying they're even going to win a game at all this season, even though I do think they'll come out with at least one win, maybe over a team like Tech, okay, a team like Baylor, who I guess they already lost to Baylor, but, I think that they've got a chance, okay, moving forward in the season. But you look at this game against Iowa State, okay, there was some positives for the Jayhawks. The Cyclones, I'm a little bit concerned here because this game, like I said, was a 30-point win, but it was only a 16-point game with, late in the fourth quarter. Iowa State had 2 garbage time touchdowns to give them a victory. But I'm going to be a little concerned if I'm an Iowa State fan. I still think that's the number 2 team in the Big 12. It wasn't an 11 a.m. kickoff on the road. Things can happen, things of that nature. But overall, don't get it twisted. Iowa State won the game, but it wasn't just a blowout like we're used to seeing with Kansas. I give KU credit. They hung around. They stuck in there. Les Miles went for it on fourth down, numerous times, which I respect. If you want to go out and win these games, you just got to go out and roll the dice. So I like the ambition. I like the riskiness that Miles is putting out there on the field, especially with those young players. But they failed to get the win, 52-22, the final. Right there down I-70 in Lawrence, Kansas. That's pretty much it here for the first half of the show. Like I said, you've got Texas, West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and TCU, the winners this week in the Big 12. Pretty interesting here. The only home team to win was West Virginia. Oklahoma State, Kansas, Texas Tech, and Baylor all losing at home on Saturday on Halloween. Some spooky, I think it's to be expected from Kansas and Texas Tech and Baylor. It really is. But I think Kansas State and Oklahoma State, I guess Kansas State could have won that game, but Oklahoma State to lose that game at home in Stillwater was pretty surprising. And it's awesome to have fans back. In sports, I know not every stadium, not every league is on the same page with this and that, but that crowd, I believe, in Stillwater was making a little bit of a difference. I know they were probably pumping in some of that fake audio, whether that be in the stadium or through the broadcast. I don't know really how that works, but, it was pretty loud there. And Oklahoma State's got a good home court advantage, home field advantage, I should say. But, it was good to have kind of that energy back, and that's just another reason why I'm so surprised that Texas won this game. And I know I tweeted this out. I said this game was, 1,000,000% rigged, and you can't change my mind. I really don't see how Texas won this game. I really don't. It's seriously, it's almost like, some higher power, the NCAA, the Big 12, said, hey, Spencer Sanders, go and fumble the football. Hey, I forget the dude's name that, roughed the kicker. Hey, go rough the kicker, give him a first down. I truly believe, if you watch the Oklahoma game as well, there were a few questionable calls in there. I'm not saying that this game would have even been remotely close, but I'm just, Texas and Oklahoma, it does not take a brainiac to realize and understand that if there is a close call, not even a close call, let's take a step back here. It's simple common sense here. If you're the Big 12, who do you want playing in your championship game in December? Who do you want? Do you want K-State and Iowa State, or do you want Oklahoma and Texas? It's as simple as that. If it's a close play, you're going to give that penalty to Texas, to Oklahoma, because it's all about the name on the front of the jersey, which is super frustrating to see as one of these smaller schools. I'm pretty much all of them, other than Texas and Oklahoma, can kind of feel this pain. Within the football world, I know Kansas can't say the same for basketball, but it's overall, it's frustrating to see. I'm not saying this game was rigged. I'm just saying that I think there were a few questionable calls in those Oklahoma and Texas games that might have went their way. So that's all I'll say about that. Like I said, you've got Texas, West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma, TCU. They are the winners from Halloween in the Big 12. Second half of the show, we'll talk about some of our power rankings as well as previews, getting into some of the Vegas lines as we head into next Saturday's action of Big 12 football. But before we do, we'll take a quick break here on the 10 of 12 podcast.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome back in here to the 10 of 12 podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gilbert. Second half of the show coming your way. We'll be talking about the upcoming games that we've got on Saturday, as well as some power rankings in the Big 12 Conference. Let's get right into those rankings. Like I alluded to earlier, Oklahoma State, #1 in the league. I don't think there's any question about the Cowboys being there where they are. Even after a loss to Texas, this is still the best team in the league. You've got a really good quarterback, a really good running back, a really good wide receiver. You've got probably, I don't want to say the best defense in the Big 12, but you look around the league, who is up there in comparison with Oklahoma State? As far as defense goes, I mean, K-State's got a good defensive squad. West Virginia's isn't bad either. But Oklahoma State, from top to bottom, this team, if they can, just some of those simple mistakes that they had, they also had against Iowa State as well. You fix those out. You level out these miscues that you have, the fumbles, the interceptions. Oklahoma State's going to be a good football team moving forward. There's no doubt in my mind that this is the best team in our conference. I know you can maybe say they've had a little bit of an easy schedule. Sure, I get that. But still, they should be They should be 5-0. They should be 4-0 in the Big 12 right now. You've got a big game, like I said, coming up at K-State. We'll talk about that one in just a moment, but Oklahoma State is up there at number 1. Number 2, I still do like Iowa State, like I alluded to earlier on the show. Even though they looked a little iffy against Kansas, like I mentioned, it's still, I don't know how you can say they're not number 2. Their only loss in the conference is at Oklahoma State, who, like I said, is the best team in this league. You've got Kansas, you've got Kansas State, who's played Kansas and West Virginia. You've got Iowa State, who has played Kansas and Oklahoma State. Following the three of them have played Texas Tech, Oklahoma, as well as TCU, right? So those first 3 games for them are the identical games, right? So there's no sort of scheduling thing that you can make an argument for. Okay, but after those 3 games that were even, you've got Kansas State, who loses to West Virginia and beats Kansas. You've got Iowa State, who also beats Kansas, but loses to Oklahoma State, right? And when it comes down to it, Oklahoma State's the better team than West Virginia. So Iowa State kind of gets the one up there on Kansas State in that regard. But I don't even know why I'm talking about Kansas State here, because I've actually got a new team up there at number 3, and that's Oklahoma. So 2 is Iowa State, 3 is Oklahoma, and then 4 is Kansas State. So I kind of made my argument there for Iowa State. It's hard to put Oklahoma up there above Iowa State, but then I put them above Kansas State. So sure, you can be angry at me for this one, but if you've watched the way Oklahoma State, the way Oklahoma has played, over the last couple of weeks, it is very hard to deny that they're doing something special down there in Norman. Okay, Rattler's finally settling into his role as that freshman quarterback. Lincoln Riley is settling into his role. It's all coming together here for Oklahoma. So I like them at number 3. I think it goes Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and then you've got Kansas State here down there at number 4. And I know I touched a lot on this in the first half of the show, talking about the recap game against West Virginia, but we saw that this team has some weaknesses, and it goes without saying that if you don't get that home run ball, you're not going to win many games in the Big 12. If they perform the way they did, against West Virginia, you're not going to, okay? If you perform the way you did against Oklahoma, sure. But I don't know if you can really rely on that. This Oklahoma game came out of nowhere. Not even the craziest of crazy, no K-State fan expected that game to go the way it did. So I give K-State credit, of course, but at the end of the day, this team doesn't have their starting quarterback. Okay, you can make all your arguments that you want to for Will Howard moving forward, but you've got a really good quarterback in Spencer Sanders, who's still getting a little bit more healthy week by week, who's trying to make those miscues, play mistake-free. You've got Brock Purdy. Brocktober's officially over, so maybe Iowa State falls down here in the standings moving forward. But you got Spencer Rattler, probably the most talented quarterback in the Big 12. And then you've got Will Howard, who's just a true freshman. Again, I don't mean to be critical of him, but I think those other 3 quarterbacks are just better. They're better leaders at this point in their career. That's not to say Howard won't be a good leader later on, but as of now, I think he's just going up against too much there with those 3 teams ahead of him. I know that Oklahoma lost to Kansas State. I totally get that. But you can't just sit here and point your finger and say this team's better than that team because they beat them. That's not always the case. Okay, like I talked about with Texas and Oklahoma State. Texas is not better than Oklahoma State. Go back to the Super Bowl in, what was that? When the Patriots were 16-0 and they get upset in the Super Bowl by the Giants. Okay, we all know the Patriots are the better team in that season, that game, right? So obviously it's frustrating to see Kansas State dip down here, but this game on Saturday told us a lot about this team's weaknesses on all 3 phases of the football. And I don't even want to say that special teams played weak for Kansas State, because they really didn't. Like, there was a kickoff that went over to, I think midfield, at least their own 40-yard line. So, they busted open to play. They didn't play terrible. It's just the fact that when they don't have that big booming, that feast play, then your offense kind of has more pressure on them to do those things, and they can't really do it. Same thing goes. It's just kind of a snowball effect. When one thing doesn't get going, it kind of just halts everything. The offense can't get going. The defense has too much pressure as well. it's just too much of an issue for Kansas State. So right now, they're sliding back to number 4 after being number 2 for a few weeks here in the Big 12. Number 5, this is, like I've been mentioning here the past couple of shows, this is the best of the worst and maybe the worst of the best. If you're looking at the Big 12, and this is Texas, you get that lucky win over Oklahoma State. You get your lucky win, of course, over Texas Tech on the road. You lose. It's just, this team's not that good. Tom Herman's time in the Big 12 sooner or later will come to a close. It's seriously only a matter of time at this point, okay? It really is. If you want to read kind of the article that I posted, it's on 24/7 Sports. It's on Go Powercat. In my quick, summary of Texas is the Longhorns will need to make, some major adjustments if they want to smell another victory. And I know that if you didn't watch this game, you're going to be thinking, what? They just beat Oklahoma State. Like I mentioned, dude, you can't bank on it being 6-0 essentially in the turnover margin, okay? You can't rely on 287 yards offensively. You're not going to win any games in the Big 12 if that's all you can do, okay? Sam Ehlinger, I don't even think I mentioned his name once. He's pretty dang overrated. Look at his offense, man. He did nothing on Saturday. So it's really frustrating to see this team win this game. But that's why I said that, and I was hoping there would be some sort of conversation about it. It hasn't happened yet. But seriously, they're not going to win another game if they play the way they did. Okay, you can't rely on 6 turnovers essentially from your opponent. You just can't. So right now, the number 5, and honestly, I wish I could put them lower, but they're 3-2 as well. So it's kind of hard to do that. But they're sitting there kind of lukewarm. I'm not going to say they can't make those adjustments. They might be able to do it, sure. But as of right now, it's not going to happen. Texas is very overrated. It's laughable that this team would even be anyone would think about putting them inside of their top 25. They still get to play Kansas State, Iowa State. So, looking at the schedule and how things line up, the numbers and the math, I'm not an expert in, mathematics or statistics, but here, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, Texas has a chance this season to really go to the Big 12, title game. I don't think they're going to do it because I think Texas sucks after what we saw on Saturday. And I know I'm being really harsh on this team, but if they can, string together some wins, this team has a chance to do something. They've got these winnable games up in front of them. I'm not saying they're going to win them because I believe they will lose them. So I agree. I'm not saying they're going to go out and run the table. But if you look at the schedule, they've got a lot of games, especially the K-State game and the Iowa State game. If you can win those games, you already beat Oklahoma State, okay? Coming into this week, you can call me crazy for saying it, sure. But now that they've beat Oklahoma State, if they can get fortunate in a few games, they've got a chance to go up there at top of the league. So that's kind of why I have them lukewarm here at number 5. I'm not saying they're going to win these games at all because like I've said, I've been very critical of this team, but I'm still going to give them a chance moving forward. They've got West Virginia, another winnable home game, an 11 a.m. kickoff for the Mountaineers on the road. That could be tough. So, I think Texas can win this game. I will talk about it here in just a moment, but I like them at number 5. They're, like I mentioned, best of the worst, worst of the best, whatever, what have you. So that's where I've got the Longhorns. Just to be clear, I'm not saying they're going to go out and win these games, but they've at least got, they basically control their own destiny. If you beat K-State and you beat, Iowa State, you'll be in, and of course you win the rest of your games as well, you'll be in Dallas in December time. So we'll see what happens with Texas. I don't think it'll happen, but we'll keep an eye on that team. TCU is number 6, pardon me. Again, maybe the worst of the best, or maybe the absolute best of the worst. Even though it's just one game, TCU did show a lot of positives against Baylor. They did. The offense was back. The defense was, in the first half especially, held them in check for a majority of that game. I know they're 2-3, but still this team is looking good. Not much to say really about TCU. I think you can make an argument for them being up there at number 5. I think you could say they could be, down there at number 7, but I think 5, 6, 7, that range here for TCU is about where they belong. But I think the farther down into the standings you can get, the more arguments you can reach back and throw at someone and say, hey, this team's better than that team, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, I think TCU is staying put there at number 6, unchanged from last week. I think West Virginia is at number 7. Even after a win, even though they're 3-2, they beat the league's best team at the time. I'm not seeing it. I just, like I mentioned, I know I kind of am reiterating some of the points I made earlier. The Mountaineers deserve credit for a big win, but they don't look like a winning record team right now. So for now, they're number 7. Not much is really changing with my opinion of West Virginia. Even though they win this game, I think they caught K-State at the right time. K-State, like I said, was bound to come back down to earth, and it happened on Saturday. So the West Virginia Mountaineers are staying there at number 7, fortunate to pick up a win. I wouldn't say fortunate to pick up a win, but I'd say fortunate the way that K-State played, against them. K-State's not going to beat anyone if they play the way they played on Saturday. Doesn't matter if it's West Virginia. That's the point I'm trying to make there, that West Virginia caught K-State on a bad day. Texas Tech actually jumps Baylor a spot. They're up there at number 8, even though they lose that game to Oklahoma. They made some dumb mistakes. And this one is not necessarily a ton about Texas Tech jumping Baylor. It's the fact that Baylor played so bad to drop themselves down to number 9. Baylor's pretty much the second worst team in the Big 12. It's pretty obvious at this point. Texas Tech should have beat Texas, right? We were within striking distance of Kansas State. They've been close with some of these games. Of course, they do pick up that win the weekend before over West Virginia. A frustrating loss there for the Mountaineers as Deggy, his brother Seth Deggy was playing at Texas Tech, so he wanted to play there, couldn't get it. And I'm sure he would have wanted to win that game. But, long story short, over Texas Tech, they're a good team. I wouldn't say they're a good team. I would say they're rising to the middle of the pack here in the Big 12. They started off slow in the Big 12, but I'm still going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and put them at number 8. Number 9, I like Baylor here. Second worst team in the league. Things go from bad to worse for the Bears. Not much to say about them. And then Kansas down there, nothing new to report there at number 10. They're going to be there for quite some time, even if they win a game. I still think that is the last place team in the Big 12. Maybe Baylor continues to get blown out in these games, and maybe they can flip-flop. We'll see what happens, but you've got to win a game first and foremost if you're Kansas, if you want to move out there at all. Let's go ahead and turn the page here to next Saturday. We've got one game kicking off at 11 a.m. That's West Virginia and Texas. That one's on ABC. You've got two 2:30 games. You've got KU and Oklahoma down there in Norman on ESPN2. And then you've got Texas Tech and TCU on FS1. And then you've got a game at 3, Kansas State hosting Oklahoma State on Fox. And then you've got Baylor traveling up there to Ames, Iowa, 6 o'clock on FS1. So we'll go down the line here. Chronologically, I know that K-State, Oklahoma State's probably the game of the week in the Big 12, but we'll talk about that one in just a sec. But West Virginia, currently 6.5-point underdogs against Texas. And this one is, if I'm a betting man, I'm probably going to stay away from because of how critical I've been of Texas, but also how critical I've been of West Virginia as well. So, one of the tale that's as old as time is don't bet on two bad teams. And in my opinion, these are two bad teams. And I know they're both 3-2 somehow, some way, in the Big 12 conference. Somehow they have winning records, but it's just, you've got to, if West Virginia plays the way they did on Saturday, again, they replicate that performance and maybe actually, force a few turnovers instead of just having those turnovers kind of fall into their lap. If they can make some of those plays, I think West Virginia can go out here and win this football game, right? But also, and even if Texas plays the way they played on Saturday, West Virginia wins because Texas didn't play good at all, right? I think I've made that clear enough, right? But at the same time, West Virginia has not impressed me a ton this year. Texas has shown some offensive signs, even though they didn't show any at all on Saturday. They've shown a little bit to say that they can make this, a win for Texas. So it could go either way. Maybe because Texas is the home team, but it's still about a touchdown spread. So it's a tough one, but I think Texas will win it just because West Virginia is kind of that bad. It's, again, laughable that Texas is ranked 22 right now, but I still think they're going to pick up a win over West Virginia. Maybe the Mountaineers come out emotionally drunk, maybe a little too amped up after that win over Kansas State. I think Texas can give them a little humbling experience down there in Austin. I'm going to ride with the Longhorns to cover that spread and pick up the win as well. 2:30 Central Time, you've got Kansas and Oklahoma. Currently a 38-point spread, man. 38 points, man. You're playing with fire if you're betting on this game. It could go either way. And I say that just simply because of the garbage time potential. And that, of course, happened with Kansas playing West Virginia a few weeks ago where they covered off a Puka touchdown late in the game. Same thing could happen here. Oklahoma is not going to lose this game. Okay, they're not, but there's still a chance that it could be a 38-point game. Go back to last weekend, 62-28 was the score in Lubbock, so that's what, a 34-point spread if my math is correct there. So, I could see it going either way here. I really would. This is another game here where I don't have a definitive answer because Texas Tech hung around, for the first 7 minutes of that game, but then just got blown out. So, KU's not going to win this game, but there's a chance they could cover. I think Kansas either loses this game by 50 or they lose it by 35 or less. I think it's going to be an absolute blowout or a one where they kind of just hang around because Oklahoma's probably not going to be too motivated for this game. Okay, they're just not. It's Kansas. How can you even get amped up about this one? But I think Rattler and the Sooners, if I was forced to pick one here, I think they get it done. I do and cover the spread, but I'm not too confident in this one either just because it's such a large number. You never know. If Kansas can control the clock and, have 5-minute drives, which I'm not saying they're going to do at all, but if they can get some run game, get the run game established, and sure, I think they can cover, but I think Oklahoma eventually runs away with this one. Again, I'm not confident in that one as well, but 38 points is just a ton. See what happens here on Saturday, 2:30 on ESPN2. Also at 2:30, you've got Texas Tech traveling to TCU on FS1. I like Texas Tech actually to cover the spread here. It's 9.5 points, which I think is just kind of a hair too high for TCU. Like I said, I was pretty high on them a few weeks ago. They lose some games, but they pick up a good win against Baylor. But Baylor's not that good of a team. So I think Texas Tech and TCU are both two teams that are on the come up. And I know this is a home game for TCU, which doesn't necessarily help Texas Tech. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. And I'm riding with Texas Tech to cover a 9.5-point spread. Of course, I record these on the Monday afternoon. So, of course, these are subject to change. But I think Texas Tech gets it done and covers. I don't know if Texas Tech wins this game, but I think it'll be a little bit more competitive than Vegas is thinking at the moment. Texas Tech, if he can calm down, not throw those interceptions, this can be a close game, and I might throw a little bit on the money line here if I'm betting on it. But nonetheless, I think Texas Tech can keep it within a touchdown and cover that spread down there in Fort Worth. 2:30 on FS1, Texas Tech and TCU. Next game is Oklahoma State at Kansas State, 3 o'clock on Fox. Oklahoma State is favored by 12.5 points, and I love Oklahoma State in this game. This might come as a shock to some of you. It might not come as a shock at all. Pretty much like I said here, this is all kind of wrapping it all together. I've been very critical of Kansas State. I've been very high on Oklahoma State, and I think Oklahoma State's going to win this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns. They've played a few sloppy games in a row. You go back to last weekend against Iowa State, and then you've got this game against Texas Tech where Oklahoma State just gave away gifts to the defense, right? I don't see them doing that here against Kansas State on Saturday. That offense, that defense, seriously, everything for Oklahoma State, in my mind, I mean, even though Kansas State's got a strong defense, if they play the way they played Saturday, there's no way they're going to compete in this game. They're just not, okay? I think K-State's offense can, try to control the clock, do what they can, but Oklahoma State's just the better team here. As much as I hate to say it, I think Oklahoma State covers this one by 12.5 points. I would be comfortable with that pick. I really would be. I'm sorry, Kansas State fans here listening, but the Cowboys are just going to be too angry after that loss to Texas And, of course, the game before that to Iowa State where it was also kind of sloppy. Of course, Kansas State's going to be hungry too. Okay, I'm not going to say that they're just not going to try in this game because, the winner of this game has a pretty good chance. A pretty good chance. It's not given or anything, but a pretty good chance to go to the Big 12 title game. So I'm not saying K-State's going to do it, but it's going to be a pretty fun atmosphere at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. But I think Oklahoma gets it done pretty comfortably out there at the Bill. So last game we've got is Baylor and Iowa State, 6 o'clock on FS1. Currently a 14-point spread. I like Iowa State to cover that one hands down. I mean, that's pretty much my pick of the week, if we're being honest here. The Cyclones are coming off of a game against Kansas, like I said, but Baylor's coming off of a couple terrible games here in the Big 12. I don't see the Bears competing in this game at all. I think Iowa State wins this game by 4 or 5 touchdowns, if we're being 100% honest with you. Iowa State and Oklahoma State are my two confident ones that I've got for this coming weekend up here in the Big 12. So it should be a lot of fun here. That pretty much wraps it up here on the show. I appreciate you spending part of your day listening to us. Follow us on Twitter at 10of12 Podcast. I'd appreciate that very much. A fun weekend last weekend of the Big 12 should be the same thing. We've got 5 games again here on Saturday. And be on the lookout for next week's show, where we, of course, digest what we got on that Saturday, and then we'll preview even down the line here to 2 Saturdays from now, essentially. So a lot of fun stuff here on the show, a lot of fun stuff here on the podcast. I appreciate you listening here every time. But other than that, I'm Ryan Gilbert. Thank you so much for spending part of your day listening to this episode of the 10 of 12 podcast.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.